Hi, and welcome to my presidential policies presentation. First, we will look at Richard Nixon. On April 28, 1970, Nixon ordered troops in Vietnam to invade Cambodia. 2 days later, on April 30th, Nixon announced on TV that the U.S. had invaded Cambodia. On May 8, 1970, during a press conference, he defended his decision to invade Cambodia. Congress felt betrayed, and many people were also upset about Nixon's decision. When Nixon ran for president in 1968, he promised a peaceful end to the war. Nixon claimed he would establish peace with honor in Vietnam in response to public outcry. He started a new plan called Vietnamization to reach this goal. However, while trying to reduce U.S. involvement, he was secretly escalating the war. The Pentagon Papers were leaked in 1971 and confirmed that the U.S. was actually planning to escalate conflict in Vietnam. So, Nixon and the rest of the government looks really hypocritical. Détente began in 1972 when Nixon visited Brezhnev in the Soviet Union as well as Mao Zedong in China. This was an effort to ease tension between the United States and the Soviet Union and China, as well as distract the nation from Nixon's failures within the United States. The Soviet Union and China both seeked new trade relations, and the United States wanted to ease tension. The SALT agreements were signed by the US and the Soviet Union as an agreement to slow down and ultimately stop the arms race. However, the treaties failed. The countries did not stop stockpiling weapons, and with Reagan's presidential policies, the détente was over. The United States and China had substandard relations ever since China fell to communism. In 1972, Nixon became the first US president to visit China. The US was struggling in the Vietnam War and wanted to strengthen ties with communist countries. Plus, strong ties with China had benefits. Ties between the Soviet Union and China were also struggling, and China was looking for allies. Ultimately, easing relations with China had benefits for both countries. On June 17, 1972, a group of robbers were caught in the Democratic National Committee office. Nixon attempted to cover up the scandal. However, at a hearing regarding the possible corruption of the Watergate scandal, it was revealed that Nixon kept recordings of everything said in the Oval Office. The recordings were subpoenaed, and Nixon kept appointing people to fire Cox until Robert Bork finally fired him. After a public outcry about this breach of power, Nixon released tapes. Nixon was impeached and resigned a few days later. This scandal ruined the public's trust of the government in the U.S. In June of 1971, Nixon revealed his War on Drugs initiative. In 1973, the DEA was created to focus on the use and sale of illegal drugs. It was believed that the widespread drug use of the 1960s was the motive behind the war on drugs. However, a 1994 interview revealed a possible ulterior motive of the campaign. The radical left and black communities are both threats to the Nixon campaign, so it is possible that the war on drugs was an attempt to criminalize these communities rather than to fix the illegal drug problem. Next up is Gerald Ford. Following the Watergate scandal, Nixon resigned from the Oval Office. Gerald Ford, his vice president, took over. In 1974, Ford officially pardoned Nixon of his crimes. It was widely believed that Nixon and Ford had a corrupt secret deal. After the pardon of Nixon, Ford's general approval level dropped and rumors swirled across the United States. Many thought Ford did not deserve his job as president. In 1973, Nixon's former vice president, Spiro Agnew, was investigated for various white-collar crimes. At the time, Ford was the House Minority Leader, but was nominated by Nixon as a candidate for the new vice president. Congress voted Ford into office, and he was made vice president. Following Nixon's infamous Watergate scandal, Ford became president. However, many people were upset and believed Ford rose to power through a corrupt deal. During Ford's presidency, stagnation became a big issue. As a response, Ford created the Whip Inflation Now campaign. At the same time, the Arab oil embargo was happening and created the energy crisis of the 1970s. Tariffs were put on imported oil, U.S. oil companies were taxed, and price control of oil ended. During Nixon's presidency, he took part in an effort to establish détente with the USSR in an effort to ease tension and eventually settle the arms race issue. The 1975 Helsinki Accords were the final act of the CSCE and ultimately created to ease tension between the USSR and the US and Europe. These agreements are also important in ending the Cold War. Next up is Jimmy Carter. In 1979, Carter welcomed Mohammad Reza Pahlavi to the U.S. for cancer treatment, following the Shah's removal from the office in Iran. In response, a month later, the U.S. embassy in Iran was attacked by a group of Iranian students who took 66 Americans hostage. Carter created Operation Eagle Claw in an attempt to rescue the hostages. However, bad weather conditions ruined the mission and killed 8 Americans in the accident. The crisis distracted Carter from preparing a campaign for the 1980 presidential election, which allowed his rival Reagan to win by a landslide. In 1979, after the Iranian Shah was overthrown, Khomeini took over. During the Iranian Revolution, oil production in Iran dropped. This caused countries to start hoarding and panic buying oil, which drove prices up. Higher demand but less supply of oil meant oil costs also skyrocketed for consumers. Ultimately, oil prices evened out again by 1981. In 1977, Carter attempted to reconvene the Geneva Middle East Peace Conference to resolve the Arab-Israeli conflict. Carter met with Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Israel, and the Palestinians for a few months, but the discussion turned into a stalemate. The president of Egypt then chose to go to Jerusalem to discuss one-on-one. Jimmy Carter and the U.S. became a mediator in their negotiations. Eventually, he invited both Sadat and Begin to Camp David in Maryland. There, Carter was able to negotiate a peace agreement between the two countries. This is known as the Camp David Accords. In 1978, the Israeli Prime Minister, the President of Egypt, and Jimmy Carter met at Camp David to negotiate a peace treaty. On September 19, 1978, the Camp David Accords were signed and established peace between Egypt and Israel. Carter worked for months to be able to eventually get the two leaders to negotiate. The 1978 Nobel Peace Prize was given to Begin and Sadat for their negotiations. The 2002 Nobel Peace Prize was given to Jimmy Carter for his help in defusing the conflict. Next up is Ronald Reagan. Reaganomics was the nickname for Reagan's economic plan for the country. Reagan believed that the rich had more money, they would spend more to stimulate the economy and make more job opportunities. He also believed it would generate more government revenue. However, at the time, it created a 2-year recession followed by the economy stabilizing in 1983. At this time, Reagan also started producing more and more upgrades for the military as part of his window of vulnerability belief. However, because less tax money was coming in but the government was spending more, this put the country in serious debt. Reagan started to cut government programs to fix the issue, but it wasn't enough. In 1983, Iranian terrorist groups took 7 Americans hostage in Lebanon. As a response, Reagan told allies to stop supporting Iran in the war. Hypocritically, in 1986, it was revealed that Reagan had arranged a secret deal with Iran to trade military supplies in exchange for the American hostages. To top it off, Reagan staffed in a portion of money from the deal with Iran to Nicaragua's cocaine trade. This was a huge scandal and almost ended with Reagan getting impeached. Starting in the 1960s, the Republican Party started to become more conservative in their beliefs. In the 1970s, the New Right emerged. The New Right opposed things like affirmative action, abortion, etc. In the 60s-70s, the Conservative Coalition was established, as well as the Moral Majority, which were big groups of new conservatives. In 1980, Ronald Reagan ran for president and won. This was a huge victory for conservatives, as Reagan supported many of the ideals and morals of the New Right. Reagan's presidency was the beginning of the rise of new conservatism. On June 12, 1987, Reagan visited the Berlin Wall and made his infamous Cold War speech, where he told the Soviets to tear down the Berlin Wall. Reagan also invited Gorbachev, leader of the Soviet Union, to talk about reducing nuclear weapon stockpiles right afterwards. Reduced tension between the US and the Soviet Union sparked a wave of democracy across Germany. This caused East Germany's communist rule to finally fall, and the Berlin Wall was destroyed. Next up is George H.W. Bush. In 1990, President of Iraq, Saddam Hussein, invaded Kuwait. Other Arab countries were appalled and called on the United States for help. Iraq ignored orders to withdraw from Kuwait, so the U.S. carried out Operation Desert Storm, a U.S. air offensive. On February 28, 1991, after 42 days, Bush called for a ceasefire after the Iraqi finally left Kuwait. After Reagan's presidency and disastrous economic policy, the United States were in serious debt. However, Bush still refused to enact newer taxes. Bush's refusal to enact new tax policies meant the cutting of many federal programs. In 1987, the stock market crashed and is dubbed as Black Monday. Bush founded America 2000, an education initiative to improve education systems in America. During his presidency, the ADA was signed, which outlawed the discrimination of the disabled. He also signed amendments to the Clean Air Act of 1963 to reduce pollution and environmental damage. Bush was also known for his successful foreign policies. On December 3, 1989, Bush and Gorbachev officially ended the Cold War at the Malta Summit. Bush was able to ease tension between the US and the Soviet Union through his foreign policy skills. The end of the Cold War marked the beginning of friendlier relations with Russia. Next up is Bill Clinton. In 1995, Clinton started an intimate relationship with a 22-year-old White House intern named Monica Lewinsky. Eventually, she was moved to the Pentagon after suspicions of an affair. At the Pentagon, Lewinsky told a co-worker, Linda Tripp, about the affair. Tripp secretly recorded many conversations about the affair and gave them to Lucille Goldberg. Goldberg had a connection to Paula Jones, a woman who accused Clinton of sexual misconduct a few years before. On August 17, 1998, Clinton confessed to a grand jury. In October 1998, the House attempted to impeach him for perjury and obstruction of justice but failed. Clinton's economic policies were often called Clintonomics. During his presidency, Clinton was finally able to fix a debt issue from Reagan and Bush. Working with Congress, Clinton used fiscal policy to rebalance the economy. The plan was very effective and eventually yielded a surplus, which was used to pay off debt. Unemployment was very low and the stock market was thriving. Gun control was a major issue the Clinton administration wanted to fix. Clinton passed many laws for gun control in the U.S., but there were two major bills. The 1994 Federal Assault Weapons Ban banned the civilian manufacture and use of semi-automatic firearms and some ammunition magazines. The 1999 Brady Bill required federal background checks before buying a firearm, as well as banning some people from buying guns. Next up is George W. Bush. On September 11, 2001, the terrorist group Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 commercial airplanes. 2 planes flew into the Twin Towers, killing roughly 3,000 people and injuring roughly 6,000. One of the planes hit the Pentagon, and the other landed in a field. In response to the attacks, Bush launched Operation Enduring Freedom, which bombed, destroyed Taliban and Al-Qaeda properties and training camps to drive them out of power. After the attacks, the USA Patriot Act and the Department of Homeland Security were both created to hunt out suspected terrorists. Also, the TSA was established. Following the 9/11 attacks, war was waged on Afghanistan as a war against terrorism. A war overthrew the Taliban and rebuilt the country, as well as protect the country in case of another Taliban uprising. The ultimate goal of the war was to completely eliminate any Taliban or terrorist influence in the country and to prevent another terrorist attack. The U.S. responded to the 9/11 attacks by invading Afghanistan to destroy the Taliban and Al-Qaeda as a war on terror. Bush also convinced the UN Security Council to ban Iran from being able to enrich uranium to prevent the development of nuclear weapons. It was a national concern that Iran could possibly obtain nuclear weapons. In the 2000 election, the candidate that would win Florida would win the election. However, Bush won by less than 0.5% in Florida, which required a recount according to state laws. The ballots were recounted, and Bush won by 500 votes. Gore requested another recount in 4 counties. Another recount concluded Bush as the winner of the election. This was fought in the Supreme Court, but the court voted to stop recounting and consider Bush the winner. A U.S. Army detention center in Iraq for Iraqi war prisoners was investigated in 2003 and revealed that the U.S. personnel abused, tortured, and even killed detained prisoners. Photos of the horrific treatment and abuse of the prisoners circulated around the United States and disgusted many Americans. This ruined America's image and reputation in Iraq, as well as people's view on the war on terror. After 9/11, the USA Patriot Act was passed to investigate and spy on any suspected terrorists to prevent another terrorist attack. This act allowed the government to detain all foreigners who were suspected of terrorism, wiretap phones, email, internet use, search warrants were valid across states, U.S. banks could investigate large foreign accounts, and terrorist crimes had no time restrictions for prosecution. This law was a violation of many constitutional rights. The Federal Reserve System improved low mortgage rates, which allowed more and more people to be able to become homeowners. Lots of people started taking out loans for overpriced houses. However, many of the families that took out loans couldn't afford to pay them back and started landing in debt. Many banks started cutting back on the amount of loans they would give out. Now businesses were unable to obtain enough money to sustain themselves and their employees. Unemployment skyrocketed. Thousands faced foreclosure. Stock prices dropped, and the national debt also grew. Bush passed the TARP to help relieve the situation. On August 23, 2003, Hurricane Katrina hit Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. It killed 1,833 people and is considered one of the worst hurricanes of U.S. history. New Orleans was the hardest hit. It was completely flooded and left thousands homeless and struggling. The Bush administration was highly criticized for the subpar response. He decided to fly over the disaster site instead of visiting the ground level site, which he cut a lot of flack for. Overall, the public opinion of Bush was ruined after the hurricane. Next up is Barack Obama. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission was a landmark court case. It released many restrictions on political fundraising and spending, as well as giving unions, nonprofits, corporations unlimited spending power for campaigns. AC-8, or the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, aimed to expand health coverage for children and adults. It allowed people to stay under their parents' insurance until 26. People were also required to get health insurance to not be fined while offering affordable options. 16.4 million had insurance under Obamacare by 2015. Obama's campaign promised to settle the Iraq conflict during his presidency. As soon as Obama entered the office, he started doing evaluations and drawing plans to bring troops home. On August 31, 2010, Obama officially ended the Iraq mission. ISIS was formed in 1999 as a splinter group of Al-Qaeda. It is a terrorist group that is attempting to create an Islamic state and often commits acts of horrific violence to gain power through intimidation. Many monuments, books, artworks, cultural sites, artifacts, etc. have been destroyed by the group in an attempt to spread their influence. ISIS has recruited thousands of members through social media. After the horrific incident at Sandy Hook, Obama focused on more gun control. He proposed many new policies for gun control, like any firearm seller must obtain a license and improving background checks. Despite his best efforts, he still received a lot of flack for the new policies. Many believe that they actually made access to firearms easier. In 2010, Obama signed the Healthy, Hunger-Free Kids Act. The law was passed to help more children get access to healthy food through school lunches to combat childhood obesity. This was based on First Lady Obama's Let's Move initiative. This is kind of biased, but I'm going to be honest, it honestly really just made school lunches a lot more inedible. I appreciate the effort though. It changed regulations for school lunches, requiring more fruits and vegetables along with healthier options. Obama was a huge advocate of civil rights during his administration. He focused on workplace and employment discrimination, the racial and incarceration gap problem, improving hate crime laws, and much more. He is also a supporter of the recent Black Lives Matter movement. Obama has always been a huge advocate of civil rights even before his presidency. Obama has been considered the most pro-LGBTQ president in U.S. history. In 2015, same-sex marriage was legalized across all 50 states, regardless of state laws. In 2009, a law was passed specifically to protect the LGBTQ from hate crimes. In 2010, the ban of openly gay soldiers was repealed. Obama also passed many executive orders that did various things like the ban of discrimination against LGBTQ people in the workplace, schools, and housing. Also, protecting trans people's rights to use the bathroom that aligns with their gender identity. He has also been outwardly supportive of the LGBTQ and marriage equality since the beginning. Thanks for watching.